Have you ever wondered how ancient potters transformed simple clay into beautiful masterpieces using only a paddle, anvil, and their hands? What made this ancient method so effective that it was passed down for generations? Today, I'll take you through the fascinating process of creating a Sinagua oya and reveal why this technique was so essential to their daily lives. This is part of my Secrets of the Sinagua series, where I explore the skills and artistry of this remarkable ancient culture. Whether you're a pottery enthusiast, someone who loves trying primitive skills, or just curious about the process, this video will inspire you to see clay in a whole different way. Before we get started, let me show you the tools we'll be using for this project. These paddles and anvils are authentic replicas I've created myself, and I'll also show you some simple alternatives you can use if you're ready to give this technique a try.
This is a replica of a historic anvil I made, used to shape and support the clay from the inside. And here's a replica paddle I also made, inspired by ancient designs. This smoothing stone is the final touch in my toolkit.
So what if you don't have access to a replica paddle or anvil? Well, when I first started learning this process, I actually hunted for some river rocks. This guy here is a really good anvil. It's got a nice flat surface, I can grip it really easy, and it's got a rounded surface. So this is something to pay attention for if you're getting into this and you're looking for an anvil. This is a really good starter piece right here. And if you don't have access to any paddles, one thing that I used when I first started is using just some cooking ware. This is a good old wooden spoon for stirring your stuff in the pot. You can also get some completely flat ones. I usually use the flat ones because this curve right here will start to create dents in your clay, and that can be a pain to get out. But this is a really excellent tool to start with. Also, another free option that you have that you can get at any hardware store is just a mixing stick. You get these with your paint that you buy at a hardware store, and you just mix your paint with this. What I did was I cut it in half. They're usually a little bit longer than this. And you can tell this is one of the first paddles I used. It is so worn in, and it's just a great tool. It has the little grip right here for your hand, and you just use it as a good paddle. It's just awesome. For this video, I'll be making a round oya, a traditional shape that was both functional and beautiful in Sinagua pottery. So let's dive in and get started.
And here's where all the fun begins. I'm going to take my water jar here and use it to fill up my water bowl. Oh, I just love that sound. And I got my clay right over here. Just going to unwrap this, pull a little chunk out of here. Just rip a piece off just like this. There we go. Beautiful. Just compress it like this. Make sure it's nice and compacted because I'm about to start to pat this out into a flat pancake. Just want to make sure I got any air bubbles out of here that may have happened when I was mixing my dry clay with my temper. Usually not a problem, but you never know. Right here, I'm just gonna smack this around just like you would if it was a dough for a pizza. I'm gonna make a nice flat circular shape that I'm gonna drop into this pookie here in a second. My goal here is to get it as thin as possible. I don't want it to be too thick, and for this project I'm actually trying to go really thin, so this is gonna make it a little bit of a fun challenge for me. This is good. Just drape this right in here like so. I'm not gonna worry if we get any cracks or anything like that because we can always patch it with some clay. This is super thin, so that's definitely gonna happen. I see some of it happening right here on this side. Yeah, we got a nice little gap there, but we'll just tear a little piece off in just a moment. Just want to make sure we get this nice in here. Just press that in there, patch that up, problem solved. Beautiful. Oh boy. So now I'm going to start working on these edges here, just kind of raising them upward, making sure this is pressed into the pookie so I have a really nice foundation to work with. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Just keep raising these edges up just a bit here. And again, I'm wanting to make sure we have the same thickness all around, so I'm using my thumb just to get a feel for it. Make sure everything is pressed in. It's looking good so far. Nice and smooth too. This kind of just rub this clay in. It's not too crazy wet. I usually don't work with really wet clay. Mine's usually on the dry side, so this helps kind of shape and mold it a little bit easier. Yeah, this is looking really thin. Wow. I haven't done an oya like this in quite a while. It's gonna have a nice round shape to it. It's gonna be beautiful. Just gonna have a good old fun time. Got my smoothing stone. This is going to smooth out the bottom of any roughnesses, but I'm not going to worry too much about the roughness. What it's really doing though is helping press it into the pookie so I have a nice round shape. And my cutting tool right here. Go ahead and shave off a nice flat surface. Now I'm not aiming for perfection on this. I'm just going to cut this. Doesn't matter if I have a high or low spot. It's just going to be the base for a coil that I'm about to add. So I'm just going to trim it up, make it nice and flat so it can support that coil. When you guys see the coil I make, oh boy, it's definitely not anything close to perfection. I don't roll my coils out on a table. So again, it really doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. It's entirely up to you guys. If you're doing something similar to this, you may want to roll it out, or you want to make sure it's a nice, level, flat cut. That's entirely up to you. We all do our things our own unique and special way. So I'm just going to inspect these edges here a little bit more. Yeah. This is looking pretty good. As you can see, it is not level at all. It's time to get out our first coil, guys. We've got some clay here. We're just going to break this off like that. Boom. Ah, beautiful. Again, I'm going to compress it a little bit. I'll just add this little piece of clay that we managed to shave off. Get that all packed in there. Break another piece off. We'll just make a half a coil. We'll use the other piece for another half. Roll this up in my hands like so. And again, you can use a flat surface if you need to. I do a lot of this pottery outdoors and I don't have access to a flat surface. And even if I rolled it on a rock, all that dirt and dust on the rock just gets sucked right into the clay. So I've learned it's just best to do it with your hands. It's going to be one crazy uneven coil. A lot of you guys do this all the time. You're probably looking at this thinking, oh my goodness, Will, this is bananas. This is absolutely bananas. But this is just how I work. I enjoy it. Makes it a lot of fun. A little bit of a challenge too. You don't have to worry about things being perfect in the primitive pottery world, which is really nice. Takes a lot of the stress out of this hobby and just makes it really enjoyable. That's what we're doing this for, right guys? It's just make it a real happy, fun experience. Got enough problems in real life. We just want to have fun and just do these things without any stress. It's amazing how clay can just make you feel so much better. So right here I'm going ahead and pressing in the coils. This is an important step. You want to make sure this clay gets pressed into the body. We're not really too important for the paddle and anvil technique because most paddles are actually going to obliterate any seam lines that may be in here. But I still like to press it in. I guess it's some old remnant of my coil and scrape days when I used to do pottery that way. I'm going to press these coils in from the inside, mainly because it's a little bit easier for the camera angle. Plus using my hand, it's a little bit of a challenge. I like to do it on my other hand, which just happens to be facing away from the camera, unfortunately. So I'm going to do the inside here. Just press that in with your thumb. Just kind of squeeze down. Down, down, down. Pretty easy. Especially once you do it a lot. It's kind of like a primary step here. You'll be doing a lot of it if you're just starting primitive pottery, so it's always a technique you definitely want to get the hang of and feel for right away. It's just like that. Beautiful. Now I got the outside to go. So like I said, I have a little bit of trouble doing it this way with my hand, but just do what we can. And just take your thumb and press downward. Downward, 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 just beautiful. And again, those paddles and anvils will just smash these coils into place. You won't even know anything's happening here pretty soon. Sometimes it's tough with these first coils though, because you might accidentally whack your pookie because it's so low. But we'll address that if that should happen. I'll show you guys how to work around that. We're almost here. We got a couple more to push in. Ah, there we go. Beautiful. It's just like that. I'm going to go around and kind of get a feel for how thick things are. And this is really thick right now because of that coil and the press down of the clay. Just want to kind of get it to an even feel. Doesn't have to be perfect right now though. There we go. That's good enough. I wanted to get that big chunk that was really just driving me crazy. And my other clay, I'll just compact this together, wrap this up like so, and we'll just set this over here like that. Beautiful. Alright. Clean my tools off just a bit. It's important to keep your tools clean, especially your anvils. They get dirty so fast, and when they get dirty, they have a tendency to stick to the clay. So just a heads up, if you are doing this, you might want to clean them periodically. Oh, which paddle to use? Yeah, we'll go with this guy here. So I've got my little anvil. I'm just going to line it up right here. We're going to start whacking away at this thing. As I'm doing this, you'll notice my wrist rotates in a circular direction. After I hit it a couple times and I rotate it just like that, you're going to notice that's done so I can release it from the clay. Sometimes it'll get sucked into the clay, the little pits on these anvils, and it makes it hard to release, and you might tear some of the clay. So I always twist, 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 and then as you can see, I'm just smacking this. This is actually really relaxing. If you got any anger management issues or anything like that, guys, this is definitely a good way to take out any aggression. It's so much fun. So I've slowed this down so you guys can see this a little bit more in slow motion. This is normal speed. You see smack here. This is kind of cool to watch this in slow motion, actually. It's kind of, yeah, this is really neat. You can see I kind of just twist my wrist as I release that anvil, and then I move on to the next spot. So there's twist, then I lift out, press it back in, and continue. Twist right there, you can see. And we're back to normal time here, guys. That was actually kind of cool with that slow motion. And now as I'm doing this, I'm not concerned too much about raising it upward. It kind of happens naturally. So as you twist, the clay starts to flatten out, and it starts to push itself upward. You see, I've got some crazy seams in here, though. This is gonna be addressed here in a minute. I can take this smoothing stone, add a little bit of water, and try and work it out. And again, this is a little bit of a tricky spot right now that we're in because we're so close to the pookie. We can't really do anything about that pookie line yet because the clay isn't firm enough. Again, the clay I'm working with, sometimes you can just pop this out of the pookie right now and start to shape it. Alright, I'm gonna pull out the big anvil here. We're gonna try and obliterate these seam lines in here like so. Nope, that's not working. We really need the big guns now. I got the big paddle. This is my biggest paddle I've got here. Just gonna make short work of these. Now you can really see that twisting motion I've got here with my wrist, especially on this bigger anvil. Kind of just lift it up, but I'm actually just twisting it. Let's switch to the smaller one because I'm starting to whack that pookie. Why do you think it's so important to compress the clay as we go? This small step makes all the difference in the final result. Just gonna keep going around until I got all these seams just totally knocked out. This might take a little while, but like I said, this is just a fun, beautiful hobby. I just love this. This is so much fun for me. As you can see, it takes quite a little bit of work. But when you're done, that work just pays off. It's just, wow. You got a unique, special piece that you've just made. It's nothing that's been mass-produced. I'm sure if you were using the, like a pottery wheel or something like this, you can crank these out super fast, but this is a whole different beast. The Native Americans in the Southwest did not have access to any kind of pottery wheel. They made do with what they have, and I tell you, they're seeing their stuff in the museums. It's so amazing just to look at those pots that they made so long ago and just that they're still around. They've survived all these years and they just look as beautiful as ever. So here we go, guys. I'm going to demonstrate the poor man's paddle and anvil method. Remember that river rock that I was telling you about at the beginning of this video? And I've got the painter's stick. This is how you would use it. Just like this. It's really no different than the paddles that I'm using that I made that are the historic ones. Except for the curvature, and we'll explain about the curvature later on. I don't even know if archaeologists are too much aware of the use of the paddles, but as soon as I made one and took a really good look at it, I realized there is a lot of usefulness with the way they designed the paddles. The handles are designed a certain way, and they all have a function. It's really quite awesome. We'll get into that later on. Right now I'm just trying to compress this as thin as I can. Uh-oh, I've got Cibola here. He's checking out the quality control on this. Oh, looks like he approves. Awesome. So I'll continue on. It's always good to have Cibola's approval on my pottery. He's quite knowledgeable in these things. So I'm starting to kind of curve my pot inward. We've reached the halfway part, and my goal is to get this a nice round body. I think we'll cut it and add a coil first. Yeah. Let's give this a cut here, and then we'll start worrying about the curvature. Sometimes I like to jump the gun. It's just like, oh man, can't wait to get this part done, but you want to make sure you always have that foundation put in before you continue onward. This is a really beautiful napped piece of stone that was gifted to me, and it just cuts like butter on this clay. Look at that. Just comes right off. Just beautiful. So I got a couple of thick spots here that I need to address. It's always good to have that knocked out, but it won't matter in a minute because once you add these coils on, it's just going to be thick again. You're just going to have to address that, but it's always good to have kind of a similar thickness all throughout the clay body. The usual here, we're going to compress this, add our remnant clay into this mix, and yeah, just roll it, probably break it in half here again. We'll do this again in 2 separate coils. We'll make our super sloppy coil here. This looks good. It's a little bit thin on there, so we'll compress this back down. Want to make sure it's all even. It doesn't have to be exact, but I don't want it to be too thin. If it's too thin in a spot, when you're starting to compress this together, you'll have one side that's way lower than the rest, so kind of want to have it somewhere in their ballpark where it's all even. We got this other coil here. We're just going to compress this as well. Get it even. There we go. That's good enough. Beautiful. Oh, I hope I got enough for. I don't think I am. Nope. Just break off a little bit more here. Just need a tiny little amount. We'll plug that up. There we go. Alright, this time I'll show you how I score this, guys. This is not really a necessary step, but I just like to do this. So I took my knife and cut a slot in it, and then I'm going to press this in. This just kind of helps merge the coil together. Again, this is not a really important step, but old habits die hard. When I was doing coil and scrape, this is how I would always do it. The paddle and anvil, of course, will obliterate any kind of air gaps or cracks inside. It just compresses everything, so it's nothing too bad to worry about. But if you're doing coil and scrape, that's how I usually address my seam issues. I used to have all kinds of issues when I first started doing that with the seams, and things would crack along those lines, and that just seemed to help, especially with the thermal shock. Get those nice and compressed in, and you don't have to worry too much about that in the firing process. This particular clay, I don't really even need to use a warm-up fire for it. A lot of times I just cheap out and go straight for the main firing. It responds so well to thermal stress. It is a real joy, this Verde Valley clay. I got the big paddle again. Just gonna go ahead and quickly knock this coil out. You guys can watch how it just gets obliterated here as we rotate it around. There it is, see? Good view now. There is no more seam right there. It is gone. And the process is really quick. Just give it a couple of whacks, move it along. It's a different angle for you guys. So I just start to beat it. Now here I'm going to want to start curving the top around. You can see I'm starting to hit it. The higher up you hit, it's going to start to curve inward around the anvil. And this particular anvil has a lot of curvature to it. And it also has a nice bulky flat surface. I actually like this river rock. It's really handy for these wide spaces. So, yep, it's been a little while, guys. As you can tell, it's a slow process. I'm using my hands instead of an anvil right here, just to kind of get a feel for it, since this is a delicate area. And I just smacking the tip of it, just to kind of help bend it inward. And I'm using my hands to get a feel for it. I can actually feel the thickness a lot better when I'm using just my fingertips as my anvil. It's just, you know, I almost wonder, how many times have I smacked this clay to get to this far of the step? Wish there was like some kind of a counter that just let you know, you like 10,000 beats before you get this far. That's kind of interesting now that I think about it. Oh. All right, I think this is firm enough. We're gonna lift this up carefully. Yeah, it's still a little bit squishy at the bottom, but it's firm enough to get rid of these pookie lines. I'm just gonna pat these in very gently. If I could handle it with an anvil, it would just be easy to just pat that out real quick, but it's still not firm enough. I just want to address these lines so they're not a problem down the road. So it's inspection time. I'm just checking the thickness here. I want it to be pretty even all the way through. That helps with the drying process, and of course the thinner it is, the quicker it dries, but the lighter it is too. I'm just going to shave this off so we can add our final coil here. I tell you, this cutting tool just makes short work of this clay. Just beautiful. Just compact that in there, break that in half. And roll out a real thin coil for this one. Hopefully I've got enough clay to be able to do this. This could be risky, guys. I don't know. Let's roll that in. Oh boy. Here we go. Let's see what we've got. Is it? Yeah, I think we got enough. Oh, how about that? Look at this. I rolled the exact amount. That is awesome. Nothing like using all the clay. And we still got some stuff to do with cutting the edge, so we'll have a little bit of clay left over, but when you don't have much clay left over, that's always a bonus. So I'm just pressing these coils in again, the seams, the usual. It's going to be really hard to show the inside of this, but I'm going to use the same technique I showed you guys on the last two coils for the inside, just because it's so narrow and my hand is basically filling up the entire pot at this point. So I'm going to address that real quick. Just press these inward, kind of squeezing with my thumb and my two fingers here. So while we're hard at work, guys, what shape or size of pot would you try first if you were giving this technique a go? So this part here, I'm using my thumb, I'm pressing inward, and I'm using my other fingers to bend the rim upward. This is going to be a really short rim. It's not going to go up too high, but I am going to go ahead and build this as high up as I can because it's going to make cutting it easier, and it's going to also get me the thickness that I'm going to need. I've got a couple of tips I'm going to show you guys here in just a moment for creating this thing, but right now I want to make sure I get this just nice and even all the way through and continue using my thumb. That's going to give it that curvature. So remember what I was telling you about the paddle? Look at this. It has all the right curves you need to create these rims. I thought that was just so incredible. It's got the curvature right here for the neckline. So all I got to do is run this through. This is going to help me get this nice and circular, and it's also going to clean out any clay that's in there. And yeah, when I first saw these, I was like, I bet you that's what it's used for. And then when I tried experimenting around with it, I was like, wow, this is just so handy. My smoothing stone happens to be the perfect size for addressing these rim curvatures. So I'm just going to go ahead and smooth this out. It's going to help create that curved shape. Dip a little water here, make sure it's nice and wet. This is looking really good. I'm super excited, like I said, about this. I can't wait to get this fired. I don't want to get too anxious, though, because you always got to wait for these things to dry. You never know. Anything could happen between here and the firing stage, but this is looking really awesome so far. I'm super excited about this. Uh-oh. We got Cibola on quality control again here. He's got to do his inspection and make sure this pot's meeting quality here. And it looks like it is. It's always good to see Cibola happy with these pots. So right now I'm going to start smoothing this out with my smoothing stone. I've got some water. We're just going to knock out all these little bumps and nonsense in it and just start to get it really good. I got to let this firm up, the rim, before I start to cut it and do what needs to be done on that. We'll probably let it sit for about an hour. I like my rims to be nice and firm before I trim them, just because when they're pliable, it's just, I don't know, it gets messy for me. It's just how I work with these. You could probably trim it at any stage. Gotta be careful not to let it dry too much. The rims always dry out quick. And if they dry too fast. But for the sake of this video, I'm gonna trim it right now. Just go in like so. I'm going to score it on the inside. Now, you don't have to worry about it being too perfect here. I know a lot of people that do this pottery, or any pottery in general, you always want that perfect rim, that perfect flat surface. You'll never find a perfect rim in the museum. So if you're trying to replicate ancient pottery, don't worry about it. Don't stress out about it. And that's coming from a perfectionist. I am a perfectionist. This was one of the hardest things for me to let go of. Just let it be. Let it flow. Let it be a happy pot. I'm going to use my paddle here to kind of compress the clay down. It's also going to flatten it down just a little bit. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark. So now I need to trim off all this little excess gunk here. We don't need this. I've got my other cutting stone I'm going to be using here. Let's use that to gently trim it off. I don't want to be too aggressive, so I'm going to just trim little tiny pieces of it. I really think I need to let this firm up, but let's just do this. Got some water. And for the rims, I always like to wet my fingers and just kind of go around it like so, and use my thumb and fingers to kind of compress that in there. Sometimes that'll remove that excess clay, but we may need to shave it off. There is quite a bit left that just needs to be addressed. Yeah, just gently here. This is a delicate operation, these rims. If you get too aggressive, you can actually take out a big chunk with these cutting tools, and that would be bad. But we're at a point where we could always add a little bit of clay black if we need to. But I don't like to do that on rims, because sometimes it just weakens the integrity of it. Some kind of big piece of temper sticking in here. I don't want that in my rim. For some reason, the biggest of temper always winds up in the rim. It never fails. You're always doing your rim and it looking beautiful, and then you got this big honking piece of temper that's just sticking out at the rim. It's like, are you kidding me? And then you smooth it out, and then you got this speed bump in there. So it's best just to remove it if you notice it right away. Sometimes you don't have that option when it dries and the clay starts to shrink around it, and then those bumps become apparent, but it is what it is. Just gonna trim these edges just a little bit here, remove that excess clay. This is looking really beautiful, guys. We are almost done. We're in the home stretch here. Look at this. Oh my goodness. This is absolute beauty right here. I think we're gonna call this a project.
And there you have it, a fully formed Sinagua Oya, crafted by hand, using only the paddle and anvil technique. While it's not ready to be fired yet, the foundation is set for something truly remarkable. In the next video, we'll take this Oya to the next step, firing it using traditional methods that bring the clay to life. Will it survive the firing process and become a functional piece, just like the ones the Sinagua relied on? Be sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on so you don't miss it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this process, let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear what shape or design you'd like to see me tackle next. Alright my friends, I hope to see you in the next Secrets of the Sinagua adventure. Till next time.